Hello and welcome to Sly REcords Podcast, a Christian conversation about pop news and video games. I'm Sly Carl, and today we're going to go right into the news. This episode is about investment as creators build worlds and find stories to tell. They need resources to do so. These funds are investing in the creation, but are also dividends themselves. We are not called to bury our talents, they are to be put to work. So Sony, taking a stab from our stories we told last week with the PlayStation Plus revamp. One good news that you can take from that is that the Returnal developers hopes that this will bring new players to the game itself, um, which makes sense in the sense that it is a game that did come out. It is a game that is going to be added to that service. I'm pretty sure it's going to be in that mid-tier. Um, and that it hopes that Housemarque hopes that this new program, new PlayStation Plus, will allow more and more people to play this game and have, and in a sense, more opportunities for the game to be in players' hands. The BAFTA-winning developer, I'm pretty sure not too many people did play it on like a release tier. It looks like it's no, yeah, PlayStation Plus launch. Yep. But yeah, hopefully that this is more of what we would want. It's just good news that the games that are being invested in have another opportunity to be played, to be put into the players' hands. Moving on from PlayStation Plus, Sony did make more investments this week. They made financial investments into Epic Games, deepening their connection with Epic. They've previously already had, which I believe it was about $1 billion already, and then with this added, it makes it to about $2 billion invested in Epic. It's not just Fortnite, it's not just the about Unreal Engine 5, but it's also about, just like how the Lego is talking about and how Video Game Chronicle has talked about, is that it is more investment into the metaverse. The Lego investor is KIRKBI, which is good to hear that both of those companies are making huge strides to continually to invest into tools that will help creators tell more stories. Moving on to story number 2, Gearbox owner Embracer says it plans to continue its 8 billion acquisitions spree. This article is from also the Video Games Chronicle. Since the start of 2020, the Swedish company has made 62 acquisitions. They bought 62 people at a cost of around 8.1 billion. This is a trend that they've already been put upon. The track that they've purchased THQ Nordic in the past, and they continue to buy other companies. They've bought Embracer Group, and that this article is about that they're not done, not even close to being done. And when people talk about how Microsoft has bought Elder Scrolls developer, Bethesda Studios, who also publish other games, and how that Microsoft is also buying Activision, they are leaving out this idea that there is also another big fish in the pond, that and the Embracer Group has continued to build and build and build, and by doing so, they do it by buying and buying and buying. They're investing into more creators, and then there are also plans to investing in more markets as well, free-to-play markets, other countries like US, Poland, France, China also included. That they're not done, and they're also on that news. They also have purchased last week. Oh, yeah. Beamdog developer. This is done through Aspire. They're one of their other publishing arms. This developer has passed RPG routes from BioWare. This is, again, more and more people are either being buying up, just not to take those developers off the market and have them for themselves, but to invest into these people, to spend your money to basically recoup other funds. The idea behind the Embracer Group is that they are continuing to not just have big games on the market, but to continue to have multiple ideas out there in the marketplace, to have more. It's basically more bullets in the clip, to have more horses in the stable, to have more opportunities to succeed. Well, there is failure, but it's more likely that you will succeed on these smaller projects, and then the cost of failing on these smaller projects wouldn't make that big of a difference in the huge scheme of what they're doing. They've purchased other companies like Dark Horse Entertainment, which has mainly been a comic book publishing, but they're also planning to do other means of media, like probably TV, movie, other stuff that they have also either licensed in the past, or they're planning on to continually to grow in that regard. This isn't their biggest acquisition, and they have also bought Gearbox, which also isn't their biggest acquisition, because their biggest acquisition is a board game company, actually. And that board game company is, sorry, one second. It's a French publisher, Asmodee, or you might know them better as the people who make Ticket to Ride and feature other projects. That is their biggest purchase that they've done so far. Right now, the Embracer Group has a market valuation of $9.9 billion. They also have ownership of Koch Media / Deep Silver, Saber Interactive, and Gearbox. 1.4 billion is the price that they bought for Gearbox. Deep Sea developer Saber is the port company who did like Witcher 3 and other ports. That estimation of that price will be rising to 525 million. They are a Russian-based company. In other news, the Cyberpunk developer Siege Project Red has dropped Saber as their port for Witcher 3 to PS5. They're bringing that back in-house. So who knows how the trajectory of Saber will go, but that is news for the future. But again, this is more and more money that's being spent for investment, putting that resources into other people's hands so they can go out and do other stuff. Alright, and now let's jump to story number 3. So, story number 3 is that Mark Wahlberg has a new movie coming out that he's personally was in development, and that he spent millions of his own money to do. Because he's pitched this film, because basically he gets pitches all the time, but then he's been recently looking for a story to tell to represent some of his own worldview, more specifically his faith and understanding. He could not get other publishing companies to come on with him, so he decided to fund a lot of it himself. That was also what I find interesting is that when Mark Wahlberg was working on Daddy Home 2, his co-star in that film was played by Mel Gibson, who also has had his own missteps in his own life, but then steps to not necessarily redeem what he's done, but to take more of an action of why we do have this struggle in life. Why do we do have these missteps? And then what faith has played in that role. And then going from that standpoint, and making a faith-based film to tell that story. So in turn, how I see what has gone is that Mel Gibson has invested in Mark Wahlberg as an older actor with a younger actor who was up and coming, who has the example of what has gone wrong in your life and then what you can accomplish past that, and what a redemption can come from your faith, or from, more specifically, God has moved Mel Gibson in that way to make Passion of Christ. And when Wahlberg saw that film, and that stirred a little change in his life, and then that has led to him very much following the same footsteps of that investment of his life into making his own faith-based story to tell. It is a more of like a biopic. It is based off of the story of Father Stu, who I believe he passed away about 2 or 3 years ago. A very interesting story. Super, I don't want to say super complex, but a story based off of different parts of someone's life, a struggle to find themselves. He was a boxer at some point in his life, moved on from that, and then in that progression of his life, he actually then did find that calling, that actual calling that we are then to invest in people. And that story moved Mark to then tell the story as a movie format. I thought that was very interesting. I'm very looking forward to that. The article, besides just talking about Mel Gibson's investment into it, but it also talked about how this is not just investment into this one story, but a investment on the whole, that more of this can come from Mark Wahlberg. More of this production investing in faith-based films will then find other people to tell those stories to, from his production company, finding more creatives and repeating the cycle of not just a loop of to make something and to recoup that investment, but then to make something that then changes people's lives in that regard. And that does it today for the news. We're just going to take a quick second to talk about what I've been playing lately. Recently I've been playing Crusader Kings 3, which does somewhat tie into what the news articles today are somewhat circling about, is this idea of legacies. So all the investments that we talked about today are pushing towards a future. And what I would always want to talk about, or I'll talk more and more on this channel about, is legacy. So Crusader Kings 3 is an interesting game. It has levels of a strategy game built upon like this world map. So you play back in the 1100s during the Crusades, basically, and you're building your kingdom basically to no real means. Like, there isn't a win status for the game, but there is a legacy that you're trying to build. You are trying to build your kingdom. Well, you're trying to build different goals for yourself. And what I found is that I'm building this kingdom so I can continue to play and grow and expand. and I'm mostly just getting my feet wet in the game, but I'm continually to be impressed about, not want to say just simple complexity, but depth that the the legacy that you could go down has, like generations upon generations that you're playing through to guide your kingdom to whatever goal that you decide it to be. The tutorial kingdom for it is that basically what leads to the kingdom of Ireland. So I've gotten to that point where you can establish that government from like a legal standpoint and go from that to hopefully the kingdom doesn't just fall apart when the current player you're playing as, the current king, dies, but hopefully what you have built is able to persist and last through the next generation. That the next generation will pick up what has been built and continue to push forward with it. A lot of it is war, parenting through your children, and a mix of like espionage or diplomacy. So those three little gameplay avenues have different levels beneath them, but they all intertwine into this kind of like simplistic board strategy game, which is fun. I love that kind of stuff. I love playing like a Risk or a Civilization. Haven't gone deeply into it, but have lost plenty of hours playing it, which is the heaviest criticism I have for like a strategy game like this or Civ, where at the end I am mostly losing hours of my life and not gaining stuff from those hours. But it's nice to play a strategy to play out what could be done. Right now on the screen, I have different traits that could be passed on from generation to generation. So you do get like that kind of like understanding of what the past generations that myself and other people of the actual world have, and what we do face from those things, like a cause and effect or like a beneficial and a negative from that. But those are contingent or that they'll carry on from those things. So mostly that's what I have to talk about today is this overarching idea of investment and then the legacy that is built from those investments. And you can see it from the stuff that we watch, the news that we listen to, and the games that we do play. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys later. Adios.